Please help me welcome Pete, founder and CEO of itsme. We have Craig, co-founder and technical director of Quantum Capture. Ramona, CBC technologist, columnist, and director at Transmedia Zone at Ryerson. And John, co-founder and managing partner at Proto3000. Please give them a warm welcome.
So when I was thinking about putting together the agenda for today, I knew I wanted to do a VR's impact on media and entertainment panel because that's where a lot of the activity is happening. But one of the discussions that I wanted to broach, because we especially have such amazing thought leaders and talent here in Toronto, is on the shift from 2D to 3D. And I think I love what Dan said in the beginning about how we are 2D people that are solving, sorry, we're 3D people that are solving 3D problems with 2D machines. And this is what the big shift is all about when it comes to AR, VR. And so without taking too much time, I think it's important for the folks here to understand how your company is ushering that in. So I'm going to go down the line, and you can just let me know, and the folks and the audience know, how are you ushering in the 3D computing wave? Pete, let's start with you.
Hey, so I'm Pete. I am the CEO of itsme. We have created technology that lets you walk into a magic photo booth and get captured very quickly and then turned into a live 3D animated avatar that you can use in VR in like a minute, and it's free. So you should all text us when you come up to our booth and get invited to a session we're hosting on Saturday so you can all become virtual avatars. I believe personally that we will need digital identities for ourselves to take us into the next era of computing. It's as obvious as the sun will rise, hopefully, tomorrow morning. We are going to need to be able to control how we are perceived in 3D environments as well. So there are times where you might want to look like a robot or a bunny rabbit, and there's times where we need to look like ourselves, and that's what we are bringing to the table.
Yep. Oh, guys, can you just shut the door for me back there, if you can? Thank you so much. Craig, up.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Craig. I'm the co-founder of Quantum Capture. We actually focus on creating 3D digital humans, much like Pete, and VR applications. And we feel very strongly that integrating these super realistic digital people into these VR applications is just brand new territory that it's absolutely where technology is heading. With everything else becoming so intuitive and natural and realistic, it makes sense to have realistic people involved in your AR and VR applications. So we use a process like Pete, it's called photogrammetry, and we pair this with motion capture, facial performance capture, and kind of like a real-time video game pipeline to bring these characters to life in real-time 3D applications and game engines. So, yeah.
Ramona.
I'm Ramona. I'm the director of the Transmedia Zone at Ryerson. And I would say at Ryerson, we're really in a pretty exciting space right now in that we're able to support a lot of student teams and industry teams who are playing with hardware, but also with the application, whether it's for documentary, whether it's for journalism, whether it's for education or healthcare. And I think that we're in this incredible space right now of throwing spaghetti at the wall, of playing, and that space to play, I think, is really one of the most incredible affordances that we're able to give creatives, is having an environment to really be able to explore what is an entirely new environment. I know for me, the reason I love being in this space is very connected to the work that I'm also doing, that I do as a journalist, as a technology columnist, as a storyteller myself, is this sort of obsession with our relationship to each other and the world around us and our technology, which of course, whether it's AR or VR, these are the tools that, you know, it's unprecedented the way that we're able to explore those topics right now. So I think for me, I'm just really fortunate in that when people have these crazy ideas, that I can say, you know, I want the one that 99% chance is going to fail, but if it's going to do well, it's going to be a paradigm shift, and to be in that position is very exciting.
Nice. John.
Yeah, I'm John Frangella from Proto3000, and our company is in 3D engineering. So we've been doing 3D engineering for over 10 years and enabling companies in the device sector. So fixtures, you know, casings for in electronics is what we do best. And I got a very, I'm lucky to have a certain job because I get to meet very interesting people that have very amazing ideas and amazing product ideas. So we're here to enable the next generation and evolution of devices.
Awesome. So I'm going to open this up to the panel now. So feel free to jump in and debate. That's what I really love. I want to know why now? What's happening? What are the secret ingredients that have popped up that are allowing us to start this shift to 3D computing? What can you speak to that pops up in your mind that's allowing us to do this right now?
I'll jump in. I think it's funny that you mentioned AR being around in 2007 and how it's come full circle again, but this time it feels like it's for real. And I think it's because hardware's gotten to a point now where, I mean, you go to any of those demos out there and put on a VR headset, you're transported to another place, another planet, another world. It's finally to the point where it's compelling, convincing, intuitive, somewhat affordable. Consumers can actually go out and purchase this stuff and live this every day if they'd like to. And back in 2007, it was something you see at an art installation, maybe like a creative agency has something cool they built, but it certainly wasn't, a component of everyday life like it is now, I think.
One of the coolest things that's happening to me is that everyone sort of got really excited about the Oculus Rift because they got bought by Facebook for $2 billion. But there's no doubt in anyone's mind that HTC Vive totally kicked ass in the first round of VR. Being able to actually walk around in a room and interact with things and create your own narrative that's much richer than something that's just being sort of passively streamed at you has, I think, demonstrated for a lot of people that this is something that's real, that they can interact with today.
But beyond the HMDs, talk a little bit about maybe like camera technology or sensors, like some of the things that are actually enabling you to be able to do the work that you're doing. Maybe on the 3D printing and prototyping side, has the quality increased? What are some of the innovations and advancements that we've seen in the past year or two that are allowing you to substantiate your businesses on this?
Well, when we first started, education, people didn't know what 3D printing was and all the different materials, and it was quite a hard road, but now everybody knows what it is. So there's lots of technology, different materials, different resolutions, and it's just a lot easier. There's a lot more access to developers to use this technology and have the ability to use it and see it, see what they're trying to achieve, which is make sure that they fit form and function, the comfort level, the ergonomics. So that is a very, very important aspect of the functionality from the hardware side. So it's allowing the ability to have access to us and know the different materials is helps developers proceed to the next level on the device side, on the hardware side. Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about what 3D computing really brings to the table for developers. What are some of the changes? If you're going to talk to developers out there that are going to be creating VR games or AR games, or just creating materials in 3D, what are some of the tips and imparting of wisdom that you would give based on your experiences with your startups here?
So the fact that we now have two really excellent game engines, Unity and Unreal, that are both free to use, plus the web is now finally being taken seriously as a VR platform. You can actually use just about any tool and platform to start experimenting with VR, and you don't have to put a huge investment in hardware to do it. So it's a pretty exciting time from the point of view of developer ecosystems. Even something like GitHub that's been around for a while for making software development social, there's communities popping up where these DIY developers are now able to come together and sort of realize the idea that they've always wanted to realize, and suddenly a small DIY team can do something cool in VR that can be a huge hit that would be much more difficult in a traditional gaming space.
I think also what we're seeing is that there are these new affordances that we haven't seen before. So when it comes to experiences that, traditionally we've thought, when you were talking about this before, and I think it's totally right on, we've put the visuals, we've put what we see as the holy grail of media, and especially of emotion and how we engage. And I think that there's some really awesome examples that maybe even aren't the sort of most high tech. They're the only terrible thing about this game is the name of it, but everyone keep talking or we explode, or everyone keep talking and someone explodes. And I think that there are these limitations still of, there's this clunky headset and you're putting on this helmet. And yet what that game does very well, for people who don't know it, someone's got a headset on, they've got a bomb in front of them, and it's not that they're doing 360 all that incredibly, but then there's other people who are outside of that space who have this manual, and it's understanding that limitation is also an affordance, that we can be in multiple spaces even if we're all right together. And that's really exciting. And there's a potential where you go, we touched on this, but there's so many more places we can go, especially if we start bringing in the sort of fidelity and the kind of technology that you guys are working with. There was another example that I think I probably bring up in every single meeting that I go into, which was, oh my gosh, it's my memory is going late in the day. It's one of the great podcasts was talking. It was a story on objects, and halfway through the podcast, they said, they had 3D printed these objects that were people had these great memories around these objects. It was a candy egg, and of course the hosts crushed the candy egg that this person had held on to for 30 years halfway through the podcast. But it was okay because they had 3D printed it, and they were holding onto these 3D prints, and the 3D prints were also at the Brooklyn Museum, and you could download them. And the fact that this tactile object that someone was telling you this incredible story about, you could print in your own home, felt like, we had been told for generations that the future of, certainly of radio, was video, was film, was television, but the fact that it could be 3D and tactile, which is so emotional and so immediate, those are both, I think, examples which, when you combine them with the fidelity, with the sort of quality of technology that we're starting to develop, show us that there are all of these new ways of engaging that are really exciting, and whole new interfaces, whole new experiences.
Yeah, that kind of leads into what I was thinking as well. So we just are putting the finishing touches on a new game demo, and something that really stood out for us while developing. So it's for the Vive, so you can walk around, use your hands for interaction. And I think subtlety is so important now. Subtlety for interaction and game design. We have these levers in the game, and something we had to do early on was decide, what's comfortable for pulling a lever? Is it 20 degrees? Is it 30 degrees? Turns out for us it was 60 degrees. But it's like, you really take for granted when you're in a game and you press A to open the door or press X to reload. Like, all of a sudden, you're the one doing that now from a first-person perspective, and it has to feel natural and intuitive. And I don't think anyone's ever really had to work through a lot of these problems before. And it's
well, the people that made levers in the real world, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
Okay, real engineers, fine. Yeah.
But actually, that's a question I want to ask, and I'll let John jump in as well, but before we move too far off. But Craig, when you're going to create a game, what does it need to be real? Like, why are we recreating the world when we could make a different world? And how do you step outside that box to say, okay, it's not going to be a lever, it's going to be whatever your imagination wants?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I think, so for us, we chose a futuristic kind of sci-fi scenario for the game. But given the fact that VR itself is a very new experience for most people still, having natural, intuitive interactions and motions really helps with the gameplay. It's almost inevitable that you're going to be teaching someone a little bit along the way how to play the game. But if they see a round button that's glowing that looks like you can probably reach out and touch it, it's a little interface design element that's kind of already built itself in a way. And I agree. I think it's more interesting to go to, far off galaxies or new dimensions, whatever it might be. But those little things that grounded in reality kind of make it appealing to the player and make people jump into the experience that much quicker.
John, do you find with your clients that it's difficult for them to think in 3D and be able to communicate requirements in that way?
Yes, it is. It's once they see their design come to life, they start to open more doors. So what I see is a lot is, for developers, is to fail many times, and to, because failure will get you to the next level. If we're all going to be too conservative about developing whatever you're going to develop, is just going to keep you from, seeing that next door, because that one door needs to lead to the next door, and the fifth door is where the aha moment happens. So, fail lots of times, and at the end, it's having them access to the actual 3D CAD model and actually spinning around, and all of a sudden their eyes open, and then all of a sudden more ideas come out, and that's where the magic happens, right?
So let's talk again about interfaces, and I want to see if you guys can give me some examples of how we've kind of moved one step further from reusing web and mobile paradigms. Because again, like if you get a chance to go out there and use HoloLens, you'll see that it feels familiar. And I think it's, when I first tried Meta, I loved my Meta experience, except it felt like the web. And I went and I saw like an Amazon-like experience, and then this was floating and it's in 3D and I could look around it, but it's still a screen and we're supposed to get rid of screens and what's going on. But then I realized, no, actually, like if I didn't have that and it was just even reality, would I know what to do? Because it's new to me. So what are some of the things that you're doing to try to push the envelope but still make it familiar? What are you seeing in this space that allows for that to happen?
So I can give a shout out to our friends at Shopify who just released a new Vive app that lets you go into this kind of cool underground layer and decorate a t-shirt that you can then have ordered and shipped to you in the real world. You kind of get to interact with this bust, which will hopefully soon be an itsme avatar. And then you kind of dress it up, you put sunglasses on, and take a couple pictures, and then once you're really confident that you like what you see, you can press order. And what I like about Shopify's hypothesis for this is not that they're bringing people into really expensive virtual malls, but that they're bringing commerce into VR and sort of attempting to actually invent new interface paradigms. So if I want to go shopping and I hate shopping for clothes, being able to do it in a relaxed, sort of spacious underground layer is actually a pretty cool way to do it.
I think for us, bringing the player's hands into the experience was a huge component. It's interesting when you look at like what the state of the controllers are. So there's a Vive controller which has a trackpad for your thumb, a trigger on the bottom, and a grip on the sides. Oculus Touch has its own whatever, thumbs up, pointing. I think they're really cool, and like they're well-designed devices, but it's still, I think people just want to use their hands at the end of the day, and I think that's where things are heading. And I think when we get there, things will become like completely intuitive. For now, we're kind of working with what we have, and it's not to knock the controllers. Like, they're amazing pieces of technology for sure. But it would still be, how amazing would it be just to not even have those controllers anymore and just use your hands, grab something, make it bigger, sure, pinch and zoom, but in 3D for real, not just on your iPhone now. Things like that, and I think that's where it's heading and that's where it's gonna get. For now, we're kind of like skirting around, doing it the best we can.
Well, the hands, I mean, hands bring up a very interesting next piece, which is that the little pointer arrow is universal, and your little pointer arrow can be the same as my little pointer arrow, but your hands are not my hands. And I think that's sort of, one of the other huge elements, not to probably step on the toes of the next panel, but that is one of the big changes that comes about with the interface, is that you cannot escape an empathy element. You cannot escape an identification element, because we're no longer voyeurs. We are active participants in these environments. And how does it change the experience that I am, what are the generic hands? Whose hands are we using? Are they my hands? Is that part of the experience? Or is it better off if they are sort of what you imagine Snapchat's version of it would be, which would be sort of like orange claws with pink talons, because that somehow feels like the happy smiley face that's not uncanny valley that we can get along with, that we can actually both agree that maybe these will be our hands. And I think those are some of the challenges as well, that are, yeah, we can create these interesting environments, but hands or legs or the way that we get around, we can pull levers, we can touch buttons, but as who? And those are some pretty big challenges that I think are pretty exciting to explore right now as well.
I mean, I just thinking about the hands, I mean, just coming out of my head is creating little rings that are Bluetooth that can actually work with the devices. So, I mean, it's all part of the kinesiology side of things. So, developing devices that are motion, right, is also part of that development. And it's brainstorming. It's working with the right team, and going and hashing through and working through the grid to really figure out, what's the perfect solution for that motion experience.
So when we capture someone and turn them into an avatar and they walk out and we put a virtual reality helmet on their head and they look down and they see that it's in fact their hands, I mean, let's face it, you can't really tell someone something. Sometimes you can show them, but they always believe what they tell themselves. So the thing about presence in VR is that it's not really something you're witnessing. It's something that when you go to sleep that night and your brain's trying to figure out what you saw, it's like something that happened to you. So it's a very powerful idea to think that we can influence the story that people tell themselves. And if the story that's being replayed on someone's subconscious at the end of the day is that they did something with their hands and they look in the mirror and they see themselves, or even better, they look around and they see the people that they care about with them, that's an incredibly powerful thing, and it's what makes this a new platform and a new paradigm.
Okay, big round of applause for our panelists, everybody. Thank you, guys. So many of these folks will be outside, so make sure you go ask some questions. I'm going to keep questions for this one and the next one. Just go and talk to these folks outside, just so you can maximize the time with some of the tech outside, because we're already at 8 o'clock, so I'm really thinking of you in the demos. But all these guys are going to be out there. Hunt them down, ask your questions, and I'd like to wish you well off the stage, and let's bring up our next panel.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, everybody.